Well, here we are. It is Tuesday, November 29th, 2022, and today we're going to take a look at the results from the Butler family collection that took place in Hong Kong just this morning. It finished up a few hours ago, and the results were fantastic, as we suspected, and many of you did as well. It was a very interesting collection. This is the catalog with this great Celadon Mei-Ping vase on the cover that was not from his collection. This was sold from another collection. It also did very, very well. We'll talk about that. And in another video tomorrow, we're going to talk about the results of Golden Hues and Graceful Forms, the Seng collection. This was that furniture load of Ming furniture, about 28 lots. They all did fantastically well. They really did. The cover lot in particular really took off. And this was a famous collection. It had been on loan to the San Francisco Asian Art Museum for a long time. And it had a long history. It goes back to the Chinese Classical Furniture Museum that was disbanded back in the late 90s, I guess, and other pieces, and many pieces bought from Grace Wu Bruce. And we'll talk about that tomorrow. But today I want to focus on this, and in particular I'm going to focus on the Butler collection because many of you are interested in this era, late Ming to early Kangxi period. That's 17th century sort of no man's land of porcelain making, when the official kilns were shut down and porcelain makers were allowed to sort of go to their own devices to make things that were interesting to sell. And Mr. Butler pioneered the academic study in this area when nobody was interested. He began buying these materials back in the late 40s, early 50s, I guess it was. And he had some great advisors, people that recommended things to him. And it all began with a comment that he made at the beginning of his own video on the subject of his collection, when he said that he bought a house that had a lot of shelves in it, and he wanted to put something on them, and a friend suggested he start buying some Chinese art, which he did. And the first piece he bought, I think, of transitional wares was the famous green teapot, wine pot, that's still in his collection to this day. He bought it in a box lot. He didn't even know what it was. He just liked it. And that is usually the impetus for the beginning of a good collection, just buying what you like. And he bought what he liked for many, many years. And he shared his knowledge and published books and gave lectures and loaned his collection. He was an extremely generous man, and his collection, in his will, he wanted it left at the museum intact. His children, I think he had 4 kids. They got into a debate, sort of a dispute over it. It was one of those unfortunate family things that can take place over wills and estates. And a number of the lots here were being offered from presumably from a member of the family that didn't want the items to necessarily remain in the museum. And they did fantastically well, and their disappointment is the gain to collectors. That's all there is to it. It's happened before, it'll happen again. But we're going to take a look at the prices, because they were astounding. Here's the listings through the catalog. They're right in the center of the catalog. Sort of, they start. I think they start fairly early in. Let's see, it was lot number 12 in the sale, was the first from the Butler collection, and then it ran through right to the end. It was all clustered together. One of the vases that did very well that we discussed last week, and that Mr. Butler in particular talked about, because it was his first big purchase. He paid £355 for it in the 1960s, late 1960s, 1969, I think. It was estimated at 800,000 to 1.2 million Hong Kong dollars. Which is basically an estimate of around, what does that work out to? About $100 to $120,000, and it went way over that. It ended up going for 6 million Hong Kong, or around 700,000 roughly, $700,000 roughly. did very, very well. Almost 750,000, I guess it was. But a beautiful vase, nice size. It was 17 inches tall. Yep, 17 inches tall. And it was in beautiful condition and very unusual with all the dragons on it, decorated in underglazed copper red, which produced these beautiful colors. And you have little areas, slight areas of green from where the temperature got a little bit off during the firing. But red is a notoriously difficult color to control, underglazed decoration, and this one came out very, very well and was very, very rare. And then this is the master, one of the ones done in the Master of the Rocks theme, a famous Chinese story. But it was beautifully painted with this very distinctive single stroke, very finely painted mountains of all these little strokes done in here. And you see this all the way around this piece. There's the mark on the bottom, and there is more of it over here. And this was a type of decoration, a decorative style that took off during the period. And you'll find it on other plate pieces. There's a plate in the sale that has the same type of general decoration on it. Master of the Rocks, again, did very, very well. But this one did extremely well. It was a beautiful, beautiful brush pot. It was estimated at 300,000 to 500,000 Hong Kong dollars. Ended up selling for 945,000 Hong Kong, or about 120 or so thousand dollars in the U.S. currency. So that was pretty exciting. And let's see what else. This is another Master of the Rocks. This was that plate. It wasn't terribly large. It was like 12 or 13 inches in diameter. It was a charger. They made them bigger, but this one was superbly well painted. And here again, you see the brush strokes, these very fine brush strokes, creating the mountains and the rocks, and providing that level of detail that is very, very good. It works so well in here. And then it was highlighted with underglazed copper red plants and flowers just here and there, just enough to punctuate it, and then colorful flowers going around the veranda of this little house, and and it was just a gem of a dish, just a gem. And this was estimated at 150 to 200,000 Hong Kong dollars, and everybody went crazy for this. It ended up going for 2.3 million, almost 2.4 million Hong Kong, or around that works out to about what is it? About 800, 600, 6 times 8. I'm just doing the math quick in my head. 2.3 million divided by 8, about $300,000. But very, very nice example. And this, I thought this would do a little better, but it was a very rare thing. I think somebody got a great buy. It was signed by Wang Yiren, and it was dated to a cyclical year of 1696. So it was pretty early, but beautiful bukai decoration, very reminiscent of transitional wares, Chongsen decorations, Shunzi decorations, and so forth. But nicely potted, beautifully done, and signed on the bottom and dated. And that makes it a pretty rare bird. And of course, it has the Butler family collection sticker on it. And it ended up selling for about $50,000 US, right in the middle of its, right smack in the center of its estimate. Did fine. And then the Chongzhen period, it was a censor. It was done between 1628 and 1644 in that short window of time, and was estimated at 300 to 500,000. Ended up selling for 1.3 million Hong Kong. Did very, very well. And here's the detail of it. Wonderful decoration, very high quality cobalt all the way through. Had everything going for it. And beautiful. It looked like it was in quite good shape. Had a little bit of minor edge roughage, which is very typical of these pieces. And but in the end, it did just fine. Ended up bringing about roughly 160,000 US dollars. All right, and then over here to this, another Chongsen piece. This was estimated quite modestly. I pointed a couple of these dishes out last week, thinking that for the average collector, you don't have to be a millionaire to buy it. This had a fairly modest estimate of 7 to 10,000 Hong Kong, or roughly $800 or $900 to $1,000 roughly. $1,200. Ended up doing great. It ended up selling for $27,720 because it was rare. It was in beautiful condition, had great color, nicely painted, and very distinctive style to it. So there you go. So that worked out to about $3,500 US, so well over its estimate again. And then another piece did way over its estimate was the sleeve vase. This was something we talked about last week. This Shunsi period sleeve vase made between 1644 and 1661. A really fine example, great decoration. For people that are interested in really fine transitional wear decoration, this had it. And if you look at the richness of this cobalt area at the bottom, how it just glows. It's just such a strong pigment, so pure, so blue, really a royal blue. Just great quality, and the outlining of the birds and the upside down birds, how they're often depicted. And they're depicted flying with their heads cranked down too, upside down. But really lovely decoration all the way to the very, very top, finishing up with these bok choy or tobacco leaves. Nicely done. And there's the back of it with a bird perched on a bamboo branch. Just a great example. And it was estimated at 400,000 to 600,000, sold for 1.5 million Hong Kong, or just a little under $200,000. It was 16 inches tall. And let's see, where did it come from? Sir Michael Butler to Medley. It was published. It's been exhibited. And the only provenance is just says the Butler family collection. So presumably he probably picked it up somewhere in his travels. I know he came to Boston quite a bit because he had a connection with Harvard, and he used to shop on Charles Street and hit the shop. There were a number of good shops down there that would have exactly what he'd be looking for. And then over to this, the small Wukai Mei Ping vase or jar. This is the pattern, other than for the rooster, is a very typical transitional wear jar. And in this size, they typically sell for, what do these go for normally? $1,000 to $1,500 in this size. It was 7 inches tall, maybe 2,000. And in this case, it did great. It went for 25,000 Hong Kong dollars, or about 3,500. So it about doubled what they normally bring. And I suspect it's owed largely to the fact of this unusual pattern with a rooster on it, because there are people that collect by decoration and decor and styles, and this would be something of interest. And then the Quillen dish, Shunsi period, a really great example. It was estimated modestly at 20 to 30,000 Hong Kong, which seemed awfully low to us. It ended up selling for 200,000 Hong Kong, or around what does that works out to? About 20,000 or so, I guess, something like that. 25,000, I guess, was the price on this, right? 25,000, yeah, 25,000. But it was beautifully done, and the enamel quality was very, very high. Beautifully translucent yellow. The aubergine was even. The shading was very good, and I love the expression of the Quillen with his head tipped up at the moon, howling with his arched back, sort of in alarm. Very animated, nice piece. And the jar, this was the famous inscribed jar. This was the one that was decorated on the front and inscribed fully down the back, which makes it a pretty rare bird. The pattern on the front is a well-known one, of course. We talked about that last week, that it became extremely popular during the late 18th century on Chinlung wares, export wares, ginger jars made for the West. And here's an early example of it, beautifully made. And it was dated to 1721, about the end of the Kangxi period, estimated at 400,000 to 600,000 Hong Kong dollars, ended up going for 693,000 Hong Kong, which is a very strong price. Again, I thought it might have brought a little bit more because of the inscription, but the audience spoke, and the audience on any given day will tell you what your item's worth. That's how it works. And there was nice Tianqi Marken period dish. This good underglazed blue, nice enameling of the flowers, very decorative, very, very sort of almost abstract in its appearance. And it's a pretty remarkable design when you think about the period in which it was made. And it was estimated 8,000 to 12,000 Hong Kong, or 1,000 to $1,200, roughly $1,400. Ended up going for 40,000, about $5,000. did just great. Beautiful piece. And then this very delicately done underglazed blue and underglazed copper red dish with the willow pattern along the shore. This is a famous general pattern. You see this pattern often on Qianqi pieces. And this one was unusual in that it had copper red, underglazed copper red decoration in it, just highlighting little areas and adding to the flowers and so forth. But the scene of the fisherman in his boat and under the willow tree and all that, you see that on a lot of these dishes. But this one was particularly fine. I think there were two of them just like this in the sale, but particularly fine, nicely done. And it went up to 40,000 Hong Kong, or about $5,000. But I don't think that's a bad price. I don't think that's an overpay. I think the estimates were intentionally pretty conservative. I think they knew the things would do pretty well, and I think they were obviously wanted all the lots to sell. They didn't want any items passed, so they went gentle on the estimates. And as we've said so many times, estimates don't really mean much other than transmit to the potential buyers where the reserves might be, because the reserve can't be any higher than the low estimate. So in this case, anybody looking at this plate knew that the reserve was no higher than about, well, in U.S. currency, than about $1,100. That's it. So the buyers all knew they were going to be able to buy that plate. And the same went for this bowl. It was estimated at 150 to 250,000 Hong Kong dollars. Ended up selling for 529,000. Which is a very strong price. But this was a huge bowl. I mentioned that last week. I said this is a 17-inch bowl, which is very unusual for the period, very large and beautifully decorated, top quality decoration all the way around. The upper band with the rabbit cartouches, which you see on lots of decorations on porcelain from the 17th century, and then this coastal scene with these buildings and rocks cropping out and pine trees and people standing on the shore. It's sort of floating on above the water. Really nicely done, and it ended up going for 529,000 Hong Kong, or about 65,000 U.S. dollars. But I think that was a good buy, given its size and given how well it's done and its age in provenance. I think that was an excellent thing to purchase, and the same goes for this really nicely done Qianqi period enameled saucer. We talked about this because the estimate was so low. The estimate was only 6,000 to 8,000 Hong Kong, so the high estimate was just $1,000. And I thought, well, somebody might get a shot at that. And the crowd wasn't having that estimate. And again, $17,000 or a little over $2,000 for the dish, but not a bad price. I think that's a perfectly reasonable price. That's not some price that went crazy. I think that was probably the realistic number. And then other things that were in the sale was this, the Jiajing 6-character Marken period dragon jar. Some of you may have seen this before. It was with a gallery in Tokyo, one of the oldest Chinese art dealers in Tokyo. And this is the company here. If you have never checked out their website, you ought to. The Mayoyama Company. They've been around since the late 19th century. For a time, this company was operating actually in Beijing. They're a Japanese-based company like Yamanaka, but they were based for a short time early in their first 20 or 30 years in business in Beijing itself. And then they moved back to back to Tokyo, rather. And they have regular catalogs. They sell great stuff. They sell top-of-the-line material. And, if you've got nothing to do, check out Mayoyama Company Limited, and they have catalogs you can browse through and all that. They have some nice things on here. It's worth reading and looking at. Great photography too, and lots of pictures, top, bottom, front, and back. All right, and then this was in the sale. This was the cover lot, of course, and this was a heck of a fine vase. This was a carved Celadon Meiping dragon vase, a Marken period, of course, beautifully potted, estimated at 50 to 80 million Hong Kong. And it ended up selling for 81 million Hong Kong, or just about $10 million US. But absolutely a rare type. You don't see these very often. The decoration was very subtle, very elegant. The glaze was perfect. It had a lot going for it. This was a corker of a Celadon, and the color was absolutely spot on. Great color. And there's the mark on the bottom. And they provided lots of photographs from different angles with the lighting, so you could really see the pattern that had been carved into the body with these roo heads and the dragons and the 5 claws and so on. Here's the base. The photography is excellent. All right, and this is why the vase brought so much. It was perfectly potted, perfectly carved, beautifully glazed with a great color. And those are all the little magical things that bring up the price. And again, $10 million later, there you go. And this wasn't a terribly big vase. This was 13 inches in height. This wasn't an enormous, 25-inch vase or something. It was fairly small, but superb quality, just superb. And then this, the Yongle period grapes dish. This hasn't been on the market since 1980. It was a good size dish. It was 14 and 7/8 inches wide. This was the type of dish that would have been sent to the Middle East. Often, if you have the books on the Topkapi Museum collection by Mitsugi and that, you'll see these plates in there. These were sent to the Turkish court and the Persian court, really, really great design. And it was so popular in Turkey that it inspired the emir to get a hold of the pottery makers there, and they began producing these. And these are known as Iznik wares. And this is a pottery type that the Turks developed, the Turkish kilns. They became fantastically popular among the upper classes, and their original designs, many of them were copied directly from the early Ming and Yuan and early imports from China that were sent over as tribute and trade goods. And the Turkish people liked the pattern so much they began doing them on their own. This isn't on porcelain, though. This is on pottery. And over time, Iznik evolved into a much more Middle Eastern looking ware with more colors, different patterns, and so forth. But this is where Iznik actually began. All right, and this was the plate. It was estimated at 3 to 5 million Hong Kong dollars, sold for 5 million Hong Kong, or about 650,000 US. But a very, very desirable type, very early, made between 1403 and 1425. So it's an oldie but a goodie. And they actually provided a good picture of the back of it, because there are a lot of fakes of these on the market. A lot of fakes, a lot of copies everywhere, and this is what the back should look like. All right, and you want to pay close attention to how the foot rims are decorated on these types of plates, how the paste appears underneath, the bits of debris that you find, and so forth. But that's what it should look like. And it doesn't mean that they can't reproduce it today, but they so far have not yet really been able to replicate the backs of these very well. And it's one of the quickest, easiest way to tell if it's a copy or not is just by comparing the backs. The fronts will always look pretty good on a sort of a cursory examination because they can copy the decoration, but some of the basics they can't copy, and or have not yet been able to copy anyway, very successfully. And one of them is the appearance of how they look on the back, and the way that, and then of course in person, the way the glaze feels in your hands, the way it looks, the way it reflects light, all that comes into play in dating these things. But this was a heck of a nice plate. All right, so that was that sale, and as I mentioned, we'll get back. We're going to do that furniture catalog auction results tomorrow, probably. But for now, I think this was a great result. I think the auction house should be very pleased. They auctioned it smartly. They didn't kill their own stuff by being forced into putting ridiculously high estimates on here. And also the article, Rosemary Scott wrote the article on this dragon jar. If you're interested in Jiajing wares, and she writes. She's such a beautiful writer. You remember what she writes, and that, of course, is the key to good writing. So you might want to spend some time reading that over the week. And that's it. All right. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. We do these videos every at least one a week. Usually we do a couple, and see what's going on in the auction market, the art market in Asia and China and Japan and all that. And thanks for watching. Leave a comment. If there's something you want to see, let me know. All right. Have a great week. We'll be back tomorrow with the furniture catalog, and Friday with the regular video. All righty. Bye-bye.